What's up everybody, you're watching Model Aviator, I'm Adam. This week we're taking a look at the Hangar 9 Fun Scale PT-19 Plug and Play. The Fairchild PT-19 was a monoplane primary trainer used in World War II by Allied forces, including the U.S. Army Air Corps, the Royal Air Force, and the Royal Canadian Air Force, to name a few. It was used as a basic flight trainer and on occasion to teach basic air combat maneuvers. Hangar 9 had a similar idea. This PT-19 is designed for sport and scale pilots looking to transition to or try out their first balsa model. Often the issue for foam pilots is that building a balsa kit or even outfitting and completing an ARF is much more time consuming, requires more technical modeling skill, and can be a lot more costly than a foam model. With the PT-19, Horizon promises an assembly that takes about the time it takes to charge a battery pack and at the cost of a large foamy. So let's get started by getting this thing together and we'll go from there. When assembling balsa models, there are a couple of things that are standard practice for us regardless of the model. The first thing we like to do is seep thin CA into the glue joints of the motor box and the battery tray. These are high stress areas, and to be honest, they're usually glued just fine from the factory. But seeping thin CA into those joints just ensures that they're nice and tight and it doesn't add any weight. With this particular airplane, you've got electronics already installed. Make sure that you don't get any glue on your motor mount or your ESC. The second thing we like to do is screw our self-tapping screws into and then back them out of the pre-drilled holes. That makes threads in the wood. Then we put a single drop of thin CA in there to reinforce those threads, give it about a half a minute to dry, and we're good to go with our self-tapping screws. There are a couple advantages to doing this. One is when you've got the screw tight, you'll know it. Over tightening it and stripping it is not something that's going to happen now. And then of course once the screw's in there, over time it's a lot less likely to back out due to vibration. We started our assembly with the main landing gear installation. There's a bend in the landing gear wire. You know you have it installed correctly when it's angled forward towards the leading edge of the wing. You'll use two nylon gear straps and self-tapping screws to hold each side down. There are two flat spots in your gear wire. Those are for the wheel collars that you'll put on either side of your main wheels to keep those in place. Next, we installed our receiver of choice. We plugged in our rudder, elevator, and throttle, and since we programmed our transmitter for flaperons, we went ahead and put two 3-inch Spectrum extensions in our aileron ports to make plugging the ailerons up easier. Next, we installed the tail feathers. There's a magnetic block from underneath. You take that off, that will expose the two holes that the bolts from your vertical are going to come through. You'll slide your horizontal in first, get it lined up. Then you'll put your vertical in. You want to make sure those two bolts go through the two holes in the top of the horizontal. They'll come through the bottom and you'll lock them into place with two lock nuts. Then you can just put that block back in place. The only thing left to do at this point is check your alignment, work the rudder and elevator to get those hinges a little bit loose, and then you can install your clevises to your control horns. Now's a good time to power the airplane up and make sure that when you install those clevises, you've got the surfaces centered. The tail wheel bracket installs with 3 self-tapping screws. Next, we used 4 self-tapping screws to install our cowling. We checked our alignment by looking at the motor and making sure it's dead center and not rubbing. If you need to make a slight adjustment, you can loosen those screws, put a little bit of pressure on the cowling in the direction you need it to go, and then tighten the screws back up. Next is our wing installation. We put our wing tube in one half, brought the other half of the wing together. There's an anti-rotation pin at the rear to help you line those up properly. Then you want to put your 2 aileron servo leads through the holes in either side of the fuselage. It's tongue and groove on the front, and 2 nylon wing bolts on the back. Next, we plugged in our ailerons and powered the airplane up to put our aileron push rods in place. That way we could make sure we had our ailerons centered. And finally, you can install your prop, and if you want to install the optional wheel covers, we used welder cement and just taped those things in place, gave it a few hours to cure, and they were good to go. So there you have it. To be fair, the assembly is a bit more complicated than your average Horizon foamy, but not by much. It took me about 45 minutes to assemble this plane, and that's including programming my transmitter. You'll spend a little bit of time after that installing your decals. The manual is well written. Every step is very well detailed, and it makes it easy to understand what you're supposed to do. The assembly goes that fast because the PT-19 is one of the newer plug-and-play balsa models on the market. So unlike a kit or an ARF, all the electronics are included and installed other than your receiver of choice. It's outfitted with a Spectrum 4250 600 kV motor, an Avian 60 amp Smart ESC, and Spectrum A391 standard servos. Its wingspan is 56.5 inches, it's 46.18 inches long, and our example weighs 5 pounds 13 ounces, ready to fly, with a recommended Spectrum Smart 4S 5000 30C. As you saw, the price point is $449.99. Horizon suggests this is a great value considering it makes getting into your first balsa plane quick and easy. It's outfitted with good equipment, and not only is it a good size model, but it's something a bit different than your average everyday sport plane. Fair point, but for it to be a really good value, it has to fly well. We'll see. So when it comes to setup, your receiver choice is going to have a lot to do with that. Being a plug and play, that means anybody can fly this airplane regardless of your protocol, so that's kind of cool. If you are a Spectrum pilot, you have a lot of options. You can choose a receiver that has AS3X and Safe Select. You can choose receivers that have varying amounts of smart telemetry. We're flying it on our Spectrum NX8, and we chose an AR637T for a few reasons. The first being, we wanted to isolate the aileron servos and set up flaperons. We also wanted to be able to dial AS3X in specifically to this airplane and see the difference in flight performance both with and without it. And when it comes to the smart telemetry, we just really like playing with the variometer and the G-meter, to be honest. When it comes to programming flaperons in the PT-19, it was pretty easy for us given our chosen equipment. We went into our NX8, and under aircraft type, you choose the wing configuration. We chose flaperons. That isolates the aileron servos, and under your normal transmitter menu, there'll be a flap menu. And now you can just program the flaperons the same way you program flaps in any other airplane. If you're confused about what port in your receiver to plug the right and left aileron into, you simply go into channel assign in your transmitter and it will tell you. When it comes to making AS3X and Safe Select correct properly and account for the dual aileron setup, that was pretty simple as well. We took our AR637T out of the box new, so we had to do the initial setup. During the initial setup, it asks you about and makes sure that the way you have your transmitter configured is what you want. It learns your wing configuration and accounts for the dual aileron setup so that it corrects properly. If you happen to be using an old receiver, you can always set that to factory settings, and then you'll have to do the initial setup again, and then it will learn whatever wing configuration you've chosen then as well. The manual is a great place to start for your initial setup. All the pertinent information is there. You've got clevis placement, CG, rates, throw, expo. Great place to start, and of course you can tweak that to better suit you if need be. As usual, our full setup page is going to be right before the flying if you want to check out our setup. Okay, now time to get to the fun part, time to get to the flying. You're going to see a full sport scale flight where we do some grass hops, show you a stall test, put this thing through its paces and show you what it'll do. And then we're going to do something a little bit different for us. You're going to see several different small scenes. There'll be flying sequences. The first part of the sequence is going to be from Heidi's camera perspective. Second part will be on board the PT-19 from the rear cockpit, so it should be pretty fun. So check this out, take a ride in the PT-19. We'll see you back here. We'll give you our final thoughts. For a tail dragger, the PT-19 handles well. It's got a long tail moment, a wide stance, and a very large rudder, so that helps. This is our first stall. This is clean, with no flaperons down. And as you see, it drops the right wing, but you just release the back pressure and it will fly right out of it. We're going to come around and do another one, this time with our flaperons deployed. And as you can see, we get the same result. How severe the stall is just depends on how slow we are to release the pressure and unload the airframe. The PT-19 slows down well, but you can tell you're flying an airplane that's a higher loaded balsa plane versus a super light foamy. And here we're going to give it the beans and do a full speed pass. And vertical until she stops. So not unlimited vertical, but plenty for any kind of sport or scale aerobatics you might want to do. So here we're doing some tight turns, just kind of experimenting to see if it will get into an accelerated stall. And it will. I'm going to turn around and try again a little harder this time, and you'll see it. And there it is. Again though, you just unload the airframe and it recovers. It's stable inverted, and will do a little bit of tumbling and outside snapping. Pretty much any kind of sport or scale aerobatics you'd want to do, it's got enough power and enough capability to do it. I enjoyed flying the PT-19. It's an honest, predictable airframe. It's a lot of fun, but it is a pilot's airplane at the same time. It will develop you as a pilot. It requires full-scale pilot stuff. In other words, things like what you just saw there. When you get at the top of outside loops or half cubans, there's enough torque, particularly if it's a big one, to pull you offline if you don't counter it with right rudder. It will just teach you nuances of maneuvers that a lot of foamies let you get away with if you don't know that stuff. And as you can see there, if you're not a fan of using rudder, you can punch and go, and it'll go. The grass at this venue is short and mostly dirt and rough, but the PT-19 did fine. This should be fun. Tooling around Fayette Flyers, just kind of show you the layout of it. You're going to see the flight from Heidi's perspective, scenes from it, and then you'll see onboard footage of the same sequence. So enjoy this. And there you have it. So the PT-19 flew well. To me, it epitomizes what fun scale is all about. And a fun scale airplane is simply an airplane that's obvious what it is when you look at it. It's certainly scale enough for you to know, but it's been embellished enough to fly better as a model. And it does. It's a solid, honest airframe, so it flew just fine without AS3X active. In fact, it flew good. But it did fly slightly better. Here and there I could feel some subtle improvements over the course of the flight regime with the AS3X active and tuned to this airframe. Obviously, when the wind's blowing, the AS3X makes a much bigger difference. We flew it on 3,200 and 5,000 4-cell packs. You can feel a subtle, very subtle difference in those two packs, not as big as you might think. I preferred the heavier pack because we could get 9 to 12 minute flight times and the airplane still did everything that I wanted it to do. Now, worth noting, the ESC has an IC5 connector, so if you use any 4-cell pack that has an IC3 or EC3, you're going to need this Spectrum adapter so you can use that battery in the airplane. We tested this plane as it comes with everything included in the box, and on the bone stock 4-cell power, there's plenty of power there to suit us. It's capable of everything it's intended for, which is sport aerobatics and scale flying, and it does that very well. And there's plenty of power on tap for that. However, if you want it to be cray-cray, there is an optional 12.6E prop you can get, and then you can fly this thing on 6L. And then I'm sure it'll really cook. The assembly time was respectably short, given what you get when you're finished and compared to the time it takes, the hours that it takes to complete an ARF. I'd say that 45 minutes is pretty good, and to be fair, I've got batteries that if I charge them at 1C take longer than that to charge, so I would say that they hit that mark. And I also have to say that I agree that it is very well equipped for what it's intended for. Horizon says skill level 3, which is experience required, and I agree. You need to have a couple of foamy assemblies under your belt, and if you do, and you're comfortable with that, the manual for the PT-19 is detailed enough that you shouldn't have any issues getting this one together. When it comes to flight experience, you need to be past a trainer, in my opinion, and into your second airplane. Probably wouldn't hurt if that second airplane is a tail dragger, but it's not a requirement. This could be a good first tail dragger. It's not that difficult to handle. If you fit that criteria, this could be an excellent choice as a first balsa plane for you. You're going to hear people say that balsa flies better, and in so many cases that's absolutely true. But the absolute truth is, balsa just flies different. There are advantages to both foam and balsa planes. They're both fun, that's the bottom line, and they can both make you a better pilot in some ways. So if you're a foamy flyer and you've never tried a balsa plane, it's definitely something that you need to do. And you can ask folks that have tried them and you'll notice that they're like me, they fly both, and you'll end up doing that as well. Now, one advantage to balsa planes over foam planes, and this is just undeniable, these are a lot less susceptible to hanger rash. Little bumps and scrapes that will absolutely trash a foam plane. You'll never know you bumped into anything with a balsa model, so that's something to just keep in mind. I think for how quickly it comes together, what it is, and how well it flies, that the price point is more than fair. And if you'd like to add one to your Hangar or Horizon Hobby affiliate, anytime you get anything from Horizon, if you go through that link, it helps support our channel. And when you support our efforts, we appreciate it so much. Thank you. That's it for us. We like it. We think you will too. Take care of yourselves. Happy flying. We'll see you next week with something else cool with wings.